recording has been started.
Good morning to our viewers in the United States. Good evening to folks who are joining from India. And good day to everyone, including our guest audience from China. My name is Dr. Adityanji, and I'm the president of the Council for Strategic Affairs, which is a virtual think tank. And we are here today for yet another roundtable discussion that has been sponsored by the Council for Strategic Affairs. The topic for today's roundtable discussion is asymmetric warfare, strategic lessons learned from the Battle of Haldi Ghati. Those of you who registered probably saw this flyer that mentions the names of our distinguished panelists. And I must tell you, they are really distinguished, and I'm honored to have them. A little bit about the Council for Strategic Affairs. The Council imparts education in the field of international relations. CSA fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. CSA encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. CSA aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. And finally, CSA condemns terrorism in all its forms worldwide. Some of our activities include a monthly roundtable discussion that we are having today on second Saturday of each month at 8 p.m. at 9 a.m. at 10 a.m. in US, and it is around 7:30 p.m. in India. There's a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on fourth Saturday of each month. CSA organizes symposia, meetings, and conferences. CSA promotes publication of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. And we offer a summer internship program for college students. So a little bit about today's topic, asymmetric warfare, strategic lessons learned from the Battle of Haldi Ghati. A few months ago, we did a similar roundtable discussion about strategic lessons learned from the Third Battle of Panipat. So we are revisiting some of the famous wars and battles in the past and learning from it. There was a philosopher and thinker by name George Santayama who said those who fail to learn the lessons from history are condemned to repeat it. And by revisiting these famous battles, we hope to learn and avoid the mistakes. Asymmetric warfare is a modern concept, and we thought we will apply this concept to the Battle of Haldi Ghati that took place in year 1576 AD between Maharana Pratap Singh, the great Hindu Rajput ruler of Mewar in Rajasthan, and Raja Man Singh of Amber, the great general of Mughal Emperor Muhammad Jalaluddin, aka Akbar. This battle is considered as one of the most significant events in the history of Rajputs, and this battle was also one of the shortest battles in Indian history, lasted for 4 hours. The force strength was heavily in the favor of 4:1 in the favor of Mughals. Who won the battle? That is a question that we will be grappling with also. So let me come to our discussants. We have very distinguished panel members today. First of them is Brigadier Arun Sahgal. Then we have Dr. Omendra Ratnu. We have Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana, and we have Professor Makhan Lal, who is Professor of History. A little bit about housekeeping rules. As soon as we start the discussion, please mute yourself to avoid noise interference. Change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. Please do not try to interrupt our esteemed speakers. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to ask questions. We do not allow anonymous questioners. All the questions have to be sent through chat function. Questions have to be very precise and specific. We don't want any long comments or a lecture in the form of a monologue. And lastly, we will be recording this event and it will be available later on our YouTube channel. I am departing from our usual setup. I will be introducing each speaker as they join us. And the reason is that we have 4 speakers and they'll be speaking about different aspects of this topic separately. So our first speaker, you will probably see him soon, is Brigadier Dr. Arun Sehgal. Dr. Sehgal is a retired brigadier of Indian Army and is the executive director of the FSI, a policy think tank focusing on national security, diplomacy, and track 2 dialogues. He was previously the founding director of the Office of the Net Assessment in Indian Integrated Defense Staff, head of the Center for Strategic Studies and Simulations, USI, United Service Institute of India, and senior fellow at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis in New Delhi. His research comprises scenario planning workshops, geopolitical and strategic assessments related to Asian security. He has written multiple books, chapters, monologues, etc., which you can look at his website. As I said, that he is currently the director of Forum for Strategic Initiatives. He is distinguished fellow at the School of Geopolitics at Manipal Academy of Higher Education. He has been, and I'm proud to announce that he has been a distinguished expert, panel member and speaker in previous CSA events. And I'm also honored to say that he is member of our International Advisory Board of the Council for Strategic Affairs. And everyone will agree that he is the Dean and Professor of India's Strategic Thinking, having taught a number of Army officers over the years, over the last several decades. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Brigadier Arun Sehgal, who is going to teach us the concepts of asymmetric warfare. So Brigadier Sehgal, the floor is yours. Please go ahead. You have 11 minutes.
Thank you very much, Arjunji. Highly overrated remarks for me. I'm nowhere near whatever you try to put me into the bracket. But anyway, okay, I will be talking about the conceptual aspects about the asymmetric warfare. Fundamentally, this is not a term which we use in the Asian context. This is a term which is used by the Westerners, and it's an umbrella term which included insurgents and terrorist campaigns against Western militaries. I mean, whenever the Americans went into Iraq or they went into Afghanistan, the kind of operations against the militaries were all termed under this umbrella term called asymmetric warfare. It had gained a serious currency in the last 2 decades, and till now, till the Ukraine war happened, and when we are seeing once again, we are seeing that there is a shift in perception from asymmetric war to a more nuanced conventional conflict. In the Indian context, we have by and large called it a low intensity conflict waged by proxies or non-state actors to dislocate and undermine the state. So what is asymmetric war? It's a warfare waged below the threshold of conventional war. Aims are political, economic, and military dislocation of state without resorting to conventional war. So please note the important part is it is a multi-dimensional warfare undertaken by non-state actors whose aim is to dislocate the state without resorting to conventional conflict. aim is to circumvent and undermine opponent's military strengths, exploit his weakness, that is military, social, political, and as also the narrative to seize to prevent it from undertaking radical conventional operations. Who wages the asymmetric war? Basically, asymmetric war is waged by insurgent groups which are ideologically driven. If you look at Taliban, Taliban waged an asymmetric war for so many years against the West. Prior to that, they waged the same war against the Soviet Union. The there in their case, the war was ideological and contextualized against the state. They wanted to retake the state or deal with the foreign interventions against the state. But if you look at the Indian context, we are now faced with a state-sponsored cross-border terror. This is a type of an asymmetric war. It's a proxy war in which the state uses insurgent groups, elements which within a state or inside the other person's territory to create chaos, dislocation, and carry out sporadic attacks, including to dislocate, dismantle, and force the other side to undertake measures which then are exploited as events which are against the population and exploited at globally and internationally and at locally. So the whole idea is it is a tactics used by weak to make the state look weak, ineffective, vulnerable, and force it to commit resources and atrocities which are then exploited, as I mentioned, as human rights violation by interest groups and social media. The, the success of operations. Why are these operations successful? The success of these operations lies in local support. There is a huge amount of local support to these operations. I mean, whether we like it or not, but that's a reality. There is a degree of local support to these things. There is a belief in the cause. I mean, there is an underlying belief that actions that are being taken by them are for the common good or for the cause, that I will die for my cause. Then there are they help in the oxygen to these groups is through media, and they exploit the media, and with the kind of influence operations now going on, they provide them the oxygen, and which then creates an international environment in which you put the strong or the larger country on defensive, something what we are seeing in Kashmir. What are the advantages? They are cost effective, require minimal support. Forces can be structured without any binding arrangements. There is no contract between the insurgent groups and the Pakistani military state. There is no such. They can be exploited. They give them money. They give them resources. They give them weapons. They send them across. They look after their children, and that's it. That's the motivation. And the motivation for them is a larger cause. So they also exploit religious and ethnic divides. As we all understand, who are aware of what's happening in the valley and other places, they exploit them. There is, for every action of theirs, there is a plausible deniability. We didn't do it. Something it's a false flag operation. It's not ours. It's a false flag. You are doing these operations and pushing it on us. There are also a function of disputed borders in large number of cases. But they're also a function of strong beliefs, like in Afghanistan, that the aggressor has to be destroyed and has to be, and there is a huge amount of public support for them. They, they also exploit the political dissensions uh, in the area of their operations and also use the political support groups and the local population to their advantage. There is, they have the flexibility to shift their tactics as the situation develops. They are not, these groups are not driven by large command and control structures who sit down and decide how the operations will be calculated. No, everything is decentralized, is done by the local groups who work towards a common aim. Yes, the aim is common aim. The common aim is to take advantage and to ensure that the other side is forced to submit to their demands. How, let me now talk about a bit about asymmetric warfare in Indian context. We have a proxy war going on with Pak, I talked about. We have Northeast insurgency. Both proxy war and Northeast insurgency are a legacy issues which left over from the 75-year-old history of India, where we have tried to resolve by and large the Northeast insurgency. We have by and large sorted that problem out. But with Pakistan, it's more of an ideological issue. Weak, economically weak, highly radicalized state of Pakistan, in which the military rules the state. The Kashmir issue is touted by Pakistan as an existential threat. Until unless Kashmir issue is the core of the whole issue, and India is the existential threat. So, weak state to exploit India and put India on the defensive, both internally and externally, uses asymmetric warfare, terror, militancy, radicalization as the instrumentalities for this. The aim was, till the Uri strike, the Pakistani state believed that by imposing unexceptional costs on India, that they would be forcing huge economic, political, and military costs on India, which in fact they did succeed. Sadly speaking, Indian Army, or particularly the Indian Army, doctrinally has shifted its mindset from an offensive, military offensive kind of an operational thinking to a hugely counterinsurgency oriented thinking. In fact, I blame, in my view, that what happened in May 2020 and the fact that we have been not so well prepared to deal with those kind of circumstances is because of the overwhelming counterinsurgency mindset that had been created, and where the large scale senior leadership was coming from. So, to that extent, they had put us on the defensive. But Uri changed. Uri changed, and then the Balakot changed. So, a new normal has been created. So, in this, and when you start looking at the whole concept of asymmetric warfare, you have to look at asymmetric warfare from the perspective of how does a strong actor who is against whom these operations are being undertaken, how does he react? By undertaking both Uri and Balakot, we have created what's called a new normal. The new normal basically is this, is that no longer will you have the exclusive right to undertake below the conventional operations below the conventional threshold and cause pain and dislocation to us. If we find that you are directly behind these operations, the Indian state will act and act in a decisive manner to deal with and will not fight shy of escalation. So this is the new normal of strategy of what I will call a limited escalation that has been created. So now, so the important point in asymmetric warfare basically is this: is that if you continue to remain defensive, if you continue to look at the whole issue from social and political context, that's what we were doing all along. Till we even then we in like 2019 we removed Article 370 and took the bull by the horn and recreate created created new setups in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. The whole ideation basically is this, that the state has to act and the state has to act decisively. And until unless you do not act decisively, you will continue to be on the defensive and you will continue to pay the price. And that price will be extracted on multiple occasions because remember, militants, insurgents, people, the organizations behind this have the entire country to operate from. They are not bound by areas or geographical areas. We know that we have today what is happening in the country in various locations. We know what happened in Mumbai. We know the attacks which happened in other places in India. So the important part as far as asymmetric warfare is concerned is that the state, the weak shall exploit the strong, and the strong must have the will to react against weak, but ensure that his actions are directed to send a message that the state will not accept this kind of unlimited war being exercised. There is another element of asymmetric warfare which people are talking about these days, and that is the cyber, etc., which I will not get into now, but if the question comes up. But important part again, cyber domain is another interesting area. And cyber domain is becoming even more interesting, is that we have seen during our current standoff with the Chinese that there are a large amount of cyber attacks have come out on our various critical elements, and we have, and otherwise also we are aware of it. And please understand that this cyber domain, particularly as we become more digitized, we become huge connectivity comes up. We have got 5Gs coming up. Our entire networks, our banking system, our power systems are all linked to are digitized. These issues will become very critical. So these are again an area that we need to look at. So there's a multiple aspects of asymmetric warfare which is not possible to do justice to in a short seminar like this. But I just try to highlight some of the aspects, particularly in the military context, for your consideration. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed, Brigadier Dr. Sehgal. That was an excellent primer to all of us on asymmetric warfare. I hope that you will continue to stay as long as possible. I know that you have some other engagements, but we are going to go now to our next speaker. And I am very, very honored to introduce our next speaker, who is a fellow physician like me, Dr. Omendra Ratnu. And Dr. Omendra Ratnu is an ENT surgeon who runs his own hospital. He is into all things social. He runs a social NGO called Nimittikam, whose main purpose is helping displaced Hindu refugees from Pakistan and integrating Dalit Sahodars into the mainstream society. He has recently floated Dharmansh Foundation of India as a central corpus fund for social organizations working on the ground, and he is very passionate about it. He has written a book on the great Maharanas of Mewar who fought the foreign invaders for thousands of years continuously. And actually, I had some opportunity to go through portions of his book. This is the book, The Maharanas, A Thousand Years War for Dharma by Dr. Omendra Ratnu. If anyone gets a chance, read it and probably read the chapter 13 of this particular book, which is very fascinating and deals with the Battle of Haldi Ghati. So we are now delving into the history portion of the symposium, starting with Dr. Omendra Ratnu, who will talk a little bit about the Battle of Haldi Ghati as he covered in this, excellent book. So Dr. Ratnu, the floor is yours, please.
You are on mute, Dr. Ratno. Can you please unmute?
Ram, I'm very grateful for the very kind words you have spoken about me, Dr. Aditya ji. And how much time do I have? Am I audible?
I was muted. You have around 12 minutes to speak. And
So, okay, I'll speak about the history which happened at the Battle of Haldi Ghati. But just one half a minute about what Sri Arun Sehgal was saying about asymmetric warfare. And he has hit the nail on its head when he's saying that the military leadership of this country has become very complacent. They have become very confused because of this all Gandhian understanding of geopolitics, which has its own connotation. Um, I've been working with Pakistani Hindus for the past 12 years, and I can tell you that I meet people from Pakistan who say that GS Sindh movement and the Baloch insurgency, and for that matter, even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the ground is ready for if Indian state was to do its own asymmetric warfare. But neither there is the will, nor there is the intellect, nor there is the even the primitive desire to hit back. A strange kind of paralysis grips the Indian state establishment when it comes to serving the same medicine to the state of Pakistan. Having said that, I'll come back to the history of Battle of Haldi Ghati. It's a very interesting thing that Haldi Ghati has been always shown to be Pratap's defeat, and that Pratap was escaping from this war. But if you look at very meticulous work done by Professor L.P. Mathur and other historians like Gopi Chand Sharma and Hirchand Ojha, then you come to know that actually there are a lot of lies over around this brilliant battle. This was a short battle lasting about 4 to 5 hours, starting at 11 o'clock in the morning on 18th of June, 1576. But interestingly, the whole thing about the mighty Mughal Sultanate under Mr. Akbar, Mr. Jalaluddin Akbar, uh, gets exposed by a very simple observation that between 1572, the Pratap's coronation to Mewar throne, and his uh, this battle, 4 years, Mr. Akbar sends 4 peace proposals to Maharana Pratap. Now, why? Why was the most powerful sultanate in the world at that time, according to the great historians of this country, the great sold out historians of this country. Uh, and when Mewar was a mere speck on the vast green rule of Islam on this country, why were 4 peace proposals sent to Pratap? Jalal Khan Korchi comes in 1572, then comes Raja Man Singh Ji of Jaipur, then Todermal, and finally Bhagwan Das. Bhagwan Das was the villain of the 1568 Saka Johar of Chittor, when 40,000 innocent Hindus were killed by Mr. Akbar in one single day. So that is one thing. The other thing is the 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 amazing planning that Pratap went into the with that for the Battle of Haldighati. He struck alliances with the kingdom of Eider, Banswara, Dungarpur, and Bundi. Although later Bundi kings drifted away and went into alliance with Akbar, but initially they had an alliance with Pratap. Pratap invigorated the entire Bhil population, the local indigenous population, to train them into military soldiers. Pratap paid heavy salaries to his staff. His main Senapati was Ram Shah Tamar, who was the exiled king of Gwalior. Ram Shah Tamar, with his 3 sons and his grandson, fought the Battle of Haldighati. And Pratap was very clear when he refused Man Singh Ji the peace proposal, when he said, in Mewar they are known as 3 Ch. Mu chauth nahi dunga, that I will not give tax. Mu chakri nahi karunga, I will not go and bow in front of Mr. Akbar. And lastly, mu chokri nahi dunga, I'm not going to give my daughter in marriage. And that's what Islamic invaders at the time used to do. They would make you bow in front of them, they would marry your daughters, and they would charge you tax, jizya, for letting you remain Hindu. So Pratap resisted it, all this, and according to the various estimates, on the day of the war, Pratap was outnumbered. The Mewar army was outnumbered 1:3. Some say even 1:4. And in the war council that met one night before the war on 17th of June 1576 AD, the youngsters wanted to Jhalaman, Jalabida, and Tarachand and Bhamasha. They all wanted to stay in the cover of the mountains and forge a guerrilla warfare from there, so that the moment they were to be overwhelmed by the numbers, they would retreat back to the safety of the mountains. Pratap's very valiant 16-year-old son, Kumar Amar Singh Ji, was kept away from this war deliberately to fight for another day. If Pratap was to be martyred in this war, then at least the Mewar resistance would go on after Pratap. That was the planning. Pratap also had his spies constantly telling him about the movement of the troops, and then this war happened, this battle happened. And for the initial 3 hours, the left wing and the right wing completely decimated the Mughal army, and they ran away 8 miles from the battle of the valley of Haldi Ghati to the river Banas. And very close to the Banas river is a city called Khamnor, and this was a place where eventually the Mewar army, the youngsters, got excited. They left the cover of the jungle and the mountains and came out chasing open and slaughtered the Mughal army. But there was one general, Mehtar Khan, who, when he saw the slaughter, to boost up the morale of the escaping Mughal army, he created a lie. He propagated it, playing drums and all that. Badshah Akbar himself has come to lead the war and with reinforcements. Now, the youngsters, the Mewar army was out in the open, outnumbered 3-1, and about 300 Muslims soldiers, by under the leadership of Asif Khan, were asked to specifically target Pratap and eliminate Pratap. And in the fourth hour of this war, 8 wounds were inflicted on Maharana Pratap. And then the bigger generals of Mewar army decided that if we do not come in the way of this murderous assault on Pratap, then Pratap will be martyred today. So one by one, Raja Ram Shah Tanwar, his 3 sons, Shalivahan, Bhavani, and Pratap, even his 15-year-old grandson Dharmagat, 3 generations of the Tanwars laid down their lives defending Maharana Pratap of Mewar. Jalaman took the state emblem from Pratap, and he resembled Pratap physically. So he confused the Muslim soldiers by saying that I am your Kal, मैं हूँ तुम्हारा Kal, I am Pratap. So the Mughal army got confused, and in that confusion, Pratap was driven away by Jalaman into the jungles, and Pratap was forced to retreat on the back of a wounded Chetak. This was a very fierce battle, and Pratap escaped with minor injuries. The Mewar army managed to inflict 2:1 damage on the Muslim army. For every 1 Mewar soldier that died, 2 Islamic soldiers died, and that was the ratio. And this is quoted by Abul al-Badayuni himself, who was present during the wartime. And the inference of this battle can be has always been historically said that Pratap lost it and Mewar lost it. I have put forward my arguments in this book that why we say that Pratap actually won this, because of 2-3 reasons, and I'm coming to the end of my talk. The first is that how do you decide the outcome of a battle? By the objectives that each set to achieve. Mr. Akbar set to achieve the objective of either eliminating or arresting Maharana Pratap. He failed. Pratap was here with an objective of consolidating the Hindu resistance against Muslims. He succeeded. Uh, the next 3 months that uh, Man Singh, Asif Khan, and the Mughal army went into the passage of Kaldi Ghati and came up to Gogunda, the place where Pratap was supposed to be. Pratap had already fortified that, and he cut all access points to Gogunda, and the Mughal army was trapped in Gogunda. And it has been variously described in various accounts by Muslim scholars, the historians themselves, that 700 soldiers died in that siege in Gogunda itself, because without water, without food, they were forced to eat the meat of their own horses. And since horse meat is not a healthy meat to consume, Mughal numbers. Once Man Singh and Asif Khan retreated back to Delhi, the only thing they could take them with themselves back to Delhi was one elephant called as Ram Prasad, who was a very prized elephant. Besides that, no gold, nothing. They could take nothing away from Mewar. For 1 full year, Pratap did not talk to Man Singh ji and Asif Khan. In Rajasthan and in we have this Dyodhi. Dyodhi means the level at which a particular Samant or a king, because Akbar was angry with him. And 2 very significant things which we have unearthed in our research is Battle of Haldi Ghati is fought in June 1576, and we have found 3 Tamar Patras written, signed by Pratap, issued Jagirs, land owner rights to smaller Thakurs and kings and vassals in September 1576 in areas adjoining the Haldi Ghati, the Undri, Mohi, and there's one more village I'm forgetting. So how is it possible that Pratap lost the battle and was giving Jagirs? He owned that land, and land revenue records are the most trusted records. They are not like historians who can be purchased and made to write anything for a few gold coins. And lastly, if Pratap had been defeated in June 1576, Mr. Akbar comes to Mewar with twice the army that was sent by Man Singh ji in November 1576 itself. What was the need for Mr. Akbar to come to Mewar if he had already defeated Pratap? These are the questions I leave the Hindu Samaj with. And Pratap was singularly responsible for halting the Islamization of the Indian subcontinent. And I'll end my talk with saying that if this Indian government, this Indian establishment, the Hindu leadership shows some spine and starts funding and helping the insurgents in Sindh, the GS Sindh movement, the PDM, the PTM, Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, maybe the asymmetric damage that Pakistani state is committing to Bharat can be reversed and halted to a certain extent. Thank you so much. Jai Shri Ram. Har Har Mahadev.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Ratnu. There's a proverb in Hindi, and that is called Gagar mein Sagar Bharna. For my English speaking audience, it is, putting the ocean in a pot. That is what Dr. Omendra Ratnu did in last 10 to 12 minutes. If anyone has chance, please read this book written by him, 399 pages, but I would specifically ask you to read chapter 13 of this on the Battle of Haldi Ghati that gives the background, the preparation, the diplomatic offensive, the tactics, the strategic doctrine, everything related to this war. And I'm pretty sure that in question and answer session, we'll have a lot to talk about and question the conventional wisdom as to who lost and who won. So I'm very thankful to you, Dr. Ratnu. And since we are in the historical dimension, it is my great pleasure at this time to invite my next speaker. And my next speaker, as you will see now, is Professor Makhan Lal. And Professor Makhan Lal is a distinguished archaeologist and historian who has taught in several universities. Generally, he is called Professor Lal, and there's another Professor Lal whom we lost, who was also a distinguished archaeologist and historian, Professor Bibi Lal, who recently died on September 10th, 2022. So I want our audience not to confuse Professor Makhan Lal with Professor Bibi Lal. Professor Makhan Lal was also a distinguished fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation, a leading think tank. He was the first Charles Wallace Fellow at the Cambridge University and elected a senior fellow at Clare Hall in years 85 to 87. He has worked with the SAARC countries, archaeologists and historians to represent South Asia on the Executive Council of World Archaeological Congress. He was the academic program coordinator and treasurer of World Archaeological Congress held in Delhi. He has traveled very widely. He is invited for various academic symposia, conferences, lectures in many countries, including UK, USA, Venezuela, Mexico, Italy, France, Netherlands, Germany, Russia, Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, etc. I'm not going to read verbatim. He's all over in the media, in newspapers, in TV programs and things like that. So there's an extensive, bio for him. The most important part is that he has published 23 books, more than 200 research papers in national and international journals, and he was the co-editor of first 5 volumes of an 11-volume series on history of ancient India that has been brought by Vivekananda International Foundation. So without further ado, I am going to invite Professor Makhan Lal, who will talk about the historical as well as archaeological evidence about the Battle of Haldi Ghati. So it is my
Thank you very much, Professor Adityan. Can everybody hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you
I
are.
can't hear Professor Adityan.
Yes, you are able to, we are able to
Right.
hear.
Thank you very much. I feel very embarrassed for this introduction I don't deserve. I am a simple teacher and a student of history, and I have done whatever I can and I could in my life. However, today you have provided me a platform to talk on a issue of asymmetrical war with example on Haldi Ghati, but I will expand its dimension little bit to see overall what has happened over the last 1000 years we keep talking about. Let me give the first, I will always stick to 11 minutes, rest assured. Let me say one very simple thing. For 1000 years, we have not been the slave. We have not been ruled by people from outside India. For 1000 years, we have been constantly waging wars against the invaders. India was never ruled by invaders all over. Certain parts were ruled, but a flickering lamp, sometimes burning lamp, was always kept alive in different parts of India to remind that, look, we are Indians, we are free. And when I say that many people, many of the kingdoms, they were lost. They were not lost to the foreign invaders. Indians have defeated Indians. Always remember this. Indians have defeated Indians. Indians have betrayed Indians. You know, Mir Jafar and Jaichand are not alone. Why people don't talk about Man Singh? Just because he was, serving under Akbar, nobody will talk about it. No. Right from 11th century AD till 19th century or 20th century end, Indians have defeated Indians by aligning themselves to the foreign powers. Two examples will suffice. One, the valor of Indians. Prophet died, peace be upon him. Prophet died in 632. By 750 AD, Islam has spread all over Central Asia, Egypt and all the eastern coast of South Africa. They have overran. I'm using the word, I know English. I'm using the word overran Greece, Italy, and Spain. But they had to wait 500 years. I'm talking about 750. Within 112 years of Prophet's death, they overran right up to Spain, and armies went up to Scandinavia. They did not spread there, but they went there. But they had to wait 500 years. On India border near Afghanistan. So that's the history of valor of India. Unfortunately, how Indians have behaved, that should be clear enough, not only by Jaichand Mir Jafar, but one more example of the people. I have more grudge, I have more complaint against, not against the fighting people, but I have more complaint against the non-fighting people. When Clive took the victory parade in Murshidabad, 1 kilometer long, Murshidabad main street, number of people that lined up to see that parade, had they pelted one stone, one brick each, Clive's army would have been buried under 7 feet of debris. Can you imagine that? 7 feet of debris, had each bystander pelted one brick only. So my complaint as historian is also about the non-fighting people. But the history goes a little deeper into it, and non-fighting people cannot be blamed for it. Third thing, it may surprise to many of your readers, many of your listeners. Never in over 90 years, or if you want take 200 years, I have no problem. 90 years, I'm taking 1857 to 1947. But you take further, never in India more than 63,000 British were there. maximum number. 63,000 people ruling 33 crores Indians. It speaks a lot. Something is drastically wrong with the entire situation that needs to be addressed. Now, having said all this, Adityanji, I will come to where the problem comes with the strategic thinking. And many times, many of my friends, my elders, they said the problem with India is they don't have Shatru Bodh, concept of enemy, understanding of enemy. No, I totally disagree. Problem lies not with the concept and awareness of Shatru Bodh. Problem lies with higher level of civilizational achievement. You know that war is considered one of the most primitive acts of human being. And if you read Aldous Huxley, he says, Aldous Huxley is a very famous essay. He says, wars are waged against other species in entire creation of world. Humans are the only one who wage war against its own species. That is true, because that I have done a lot of things, but the problem lies is having achieved a very higher level of civilizational value. You know what you are talking about, Geneva Convention, Hague Convention, right from late 19th century till 1947. All this is available in Mahabharata, in Kautilya, in Manu. Manu, poor Manu, so much decried, has given one of the best treatises on the warfare. And when somebody says strategic warfare or asymmetric warfare is modern concept, Adityanji, I am very sadly, I disagree that asymmetric warfare was very much thought about, detailed written by Manu, by Mahabharata and Ramayana. Kautilya disagrees, being a very practical man. But look at what asymmetrical warfare does, but what should not be done in asymmetrical war. You see, Mahabharata very clearly lays down, you know, Shant Parva or Bhishma Parva. No warrior may kill or injure warrior who has surrendered. It's not respected in asymmetrical warfare. No one surrenders, becomes the prisoner of war, and will then be subjected to protection of the people. Prisoner of war. Anybody surrenders, he has a, I'm talking about Mahabharata, not 1947, not 20th century, but at least about 4th millennium BC. No warrior may be killed or injured unarmed. If any war, even if he's a warrior, if he's unarmed, you can't fight with him. No warrior may be killed, injured, unconscious warrior. If he has fallen unconscious in the field, you will not kill. No warrior may be killed or injured person, animals not taking part in war. Even look at this concept of higher civilization, but you cannot kill even an element who is not part of your war. That's kind of situation. No warrior may kill or injure a warrior whose back is turned away. If somebody is running away, you will not kill it. This has not happened. I will come on that very briefly. No warrior may strike an animal not considered a direct threat. Even if it's a part of war, you will not kill it if he is not a threat, if it is not a threat. Warriors may not engage in any unfair warfare whatsoever. And within that, injunctions have been given. Lives of women, prisoner, war, children, and farmers are sacred, need not to be touched at all. With this kind of incredible sanctions, incredible teaching coming down every year during the monsoon season, being spoken to all the people, if you are aware, Bhagavad Gita Katha, which goes on from Chaumasa in 4 months, right from Asar till that 4 months, meaning thereby during that entire people listen to it. And therefore, when we talk in terms of asymmetrical warfare, and we don't have the concept of it, no, we have the concept of it. What Geneva was doing in 1947 Geneva Convention, we had done it 3152 BC. That's almost about 5,000 years before. That's one thing. Second thing is how to combat it. That is where Kautilya comes in. And also, unfortunately, it has been wrongly propagated. Ahimsa Parmo Dharma. No. Ahimsa Parmo Dharma is only half of the sentence. Full sentence is Ahimsa Parmo Dharma, Dharma Rakshita Hinsa Parmo Dharma. धर्म अहिंसा परम धर्म है. गांधी जी कहते कहते मर गए, लेकिन एक बार भी उन्होंने दूसरा सेंटेंस नहीं बोला कि धर्म रखते हिंसा परमो, धर्म की रक्षा के लिए हिंसा सबसे बड़ा धर्म है. अदरवाइज इसको कहते हैं हिंसा अहिंसा परमो धर्म, धर्म हिंसा तथैव, धर्म की रक्षा के लिए हिंसा से बड़ा. और ये आप जान लीजिए, भगवान राम को आप मानते हैं, अंत में उन्होंने क्या किया धर्म के रक्षा के लिए? क्या वो अपना गाल आगे पीछे बढ़ाते रहे रावण के आगे? या अर्जुन भगवान कृष्ण ने क्या किया? अहिंसा से लगे रहे. अगर मैं भगवान राम और कृष्ण का फॉलोअर हूं, should I say that ahimsa is everything? Then what happens to my ideal Bhagwans? Therefore, there is something drastically wrong. I don't know how much time I have been left with, but I would like to say that at the end, we have been very much aware of asymmetrical war right from long time. All that has happened is we have also been very disloyal to our own religion and our own country and our own thing. I'm very sorry to say so bluntly. And we have been one of the most selfish people in entire world. For us, our family, nuclear family, what in English say, is more important, not even the extended family today. Brothers, cousins, leave cousins along, brothers. So all these things have added, and my only submission, many of things may come in the question answer, and I will be happy to take up. My only submission is India has throughout the history has been defeated by Indians themselves. We need to change this mindset. And Adityanji, you are aware that I am fighting battle for rewriting history for the last 35 years. If you know that, right from 1987, to be very clear. Nobody wants to talk. At least 3 subjects have been thoroughly neglected, which should have been mainstream of our Indian writing: Pratap, Shivaji, and Sikh Gurus. Nobody talks about Sikh Guru sacrifices. After all, which Guru among the Sikhs is there who did not lose their children, who did not lose their family, but still they saved you? And we have been very callous in treating them as a historian. With these
Thank you,
words,
Professor.
I would like to say
Makhanlalji.
thank you very much for inviting me. I am grateful to you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Makhanlalji, for your comments. And we move further in our discussion. Our next speaker is Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana. Major General Asthana is a global strategic and security analyst. He serves on the Governing Council of Confederation of Educational Excellence. He is the Chief Instructor of United Service Institutions of India. He serves on Security Council of International Organization for Educational Development. He serves on International Police Commission. He has been affiliated with so many organizations, Advisory Board of Swedish Armed Forces International Center, on Expert Group of Challenges Forum for International Peace in Sweden, IOED representative at UN headquarters in Vienna, Austria. He has authored more than 400 publications. He has been awarded twice by President of India, twice by the United Nations, various awards. So without further ado, I will invite Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana. And I might say this is not the first time Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana is on our platform. He has served in various forums and distinguished lectures before also. So Major General Asthana, it is your task now to integrate all the presentations, the concepts, the history of Haldighati battle, and what as a military man, lessons we draw, strategic lessons from that particular battle, because we are focusing on that particular battle. Major General Asthana, please.
Thank you, Dr. Adityanji. Esteemed and eminent panelists, co-panelists, and friends from CSA. It's always a pleasure to speak on this platform. More so because of the well-informed audience. And it was music to my ears when I heard all the panelists before me, because there are so many things and so many messages which certainly inspire me and show the depth of the research and the subject which they have and which they have put into various efforts which they tried to put it on paper. I couldn't agree more that India was defeated by Indians itself. It could never be defeated by anybody else. Certainly, I couldn't agree with it more. Now, as Dr. Adityanji has mentioned, I will try and put everything in the military context and the strategic context with the focus on Haldighati, and I will try and pick up points from the earlier speakers as well to sum it up in some manner or the other. Firstly, let me move straight to Haldighati battle. What was the strategic situation? The political situation was that all other Rajputs had submitted to Akbar, and Maharana Pratap was the only one who did not submit to Akbar. Now, if you see the geographical situation, now here let me refer to some maps. Can you, is the map visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir, the map is visible. The map is.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you
Now,
can push
if
it,
you see
you can push
the
it
location
bit
of, now this, what is shown in blue is the area of Haldighati. If Delhi was somewhere towards north and Gujarat, which was supposed to be very prosperous, the routes were passing through this hilly terrain, which was also a jungle terrain, which was an eyesore as far as Akbar is concerned, because the routes through the heavy desert of Jaisalmer and Bardmer, these were difficult routes. So this was a route which certainly needed to be cleared. So that was the geostrategic situation, and therefore a consolidation and subordination of Maharana Pratap was essential as far as Akbar is concerned. Now coming on to the diplomacy, was it tried in this case or not? Yes, diplomacy was tried. Somebody mentioned already 4 times people were sent to convince Maharana. But then the fact is, Maharana was convinced that he has to protect the sovereignty of the kingdom which he commands, and therefore this battle certainly is commemorated as a symbol of valor, courage, skillful execution of the geography, as well as, shall I say, a lesson for protection of sovereignty and how far Indians can go to protect their sovereignty, and that is the passion which we still carry as far as army is concerned. Now, if we look at some of these pictures, this will give you that amidst the deserts, these were small hills and they had some kind of vegetation to protect themselves. It was also mentioned the area where this battle was fought. The Mansingh camp was somewhere here in Molera. There was Banas River, which the second speaker did speak about. And this, if you see, this is the ghati, or these are the passes and these are the hillocks with this kind of vegetation. So this is the kind of area which was very appropriately used and skillfully used to get the advantage. And if you use terrain friction to your advantage in military terms, you always get a better dividend and you can defeat bigger armies, which happened in this case. Now, if you see, the first encounter took place here. There were various encounters. So these are where it is cross is given. These were various encounters. But then the main battle was where this X3 is written. This was the main battle where Battle of Panipat, where it was fought. The Mansingh camp was somewhere here. Maharana's camp was somewhere in this area. Balicha. That was the place. And this is the area where it was fought. And today's, if you see how this pass looks like, these are the later pictures, but this give you an idea that if you dominate the shoulders of the pass, it was very difficult for any army to attack you, and certainly the Mughals would have suffered a fair amount of casualties. And also, even if you have bigger army, the application of force becomes difficult. This is another picture which indicates that this is the route, and these were the hillocks, which if you dominate those hillocks, and these were the two areas which were mentioned earlier by earlier speaker. I will not dwell upon it. So I will now, I think, move back to the, I will stop sharing the screen and now come here, because the further I will speak extempore. Now, as far as terrain is concerned, as I mentioned, a very skillful use of terrain was a major lesson which was brought. Asymmetry in force level. Now, this was an asymmetric war, and asymmetry is of various kinds. Asymmetry is in force level is one example of this asymmetry, in which the ratio was 1:4. There are various historians, and it was rightly pointed out that whether you call it 1:3 or 1:4, but it was apparently 1:4. The alliances were built by Maharaja and also by the others. As Kautilya has mentioned, enemy's enemy is your friend. So I think Hakim Khan, when he joined Maharana, that was the reason, because he also wanted to settle scores with Akbar. So I think it was made best use of. And as it was mentioned, the casualties were certainly, given the kind of force level which was there with both the parties, I think Maharana came out to be much better off as far as the casualties are concerned. And the more important thing is that withdrawal as an operation of war was certainly executed by him. And why you withdraw? For the simple reason, because at times you need force preservation. If you are not making a headway in a particular contest, then it is better to disperse and reorganize yourself, and then you have better sustainability of operations. And this is exactly what Maharaja did as to work out the outcome. Now, let me also talk about some more issues. Firstly, the geography suited the tactical battle, as I mentioned, and this route, why Maharana had to choose this route was that this is the shortest route to Gujarat. So if you block this route for Akbar, Akbar had problems, and therefore Akbar was certainly hell-bent to eliminate this particular area and get this particular area, which Maharana ensured that so long he was alive or even later, he never compromised on it. And subsequently, even it's said that you can lose a battle, but you have to win a war. So I think he did win a war in a manner that he could recapture most of the territory. The second point is regarding the asymmetric warfare. Now, there are many definitions and they are quite confusing, and a whole lot of people pick up different definitions. And since I do teach these definitions to all the military personnel and all the serving military officers of Indian Army, so I must tell you, and I must clarify some of them. Firstly, when we talk of asymmetry, it is in many forms. It is in the form of force, it is in the form of battle space, it is in the form of organizational soundness, it is in the form of morality, it is in the form of goals, and newer dimensions have been added, which Brigadier Sehgal also mentioned regarding cyber, digital, etc., and technology. So there is asymmetry in various manners, and you can utilize that asymmetry in different manners. Now, there are certain common definitions. As it was rightly pointed out, asymmetric warfare is a Western terminology, but it was rightly pointed out by historians. It has been exercised right from the word go. As far as we can trace our Indian history, it was utilized, and it was utilized well. So it's certainly an old concept, and I totally agree with Professor Makhanlal on that issue. When in India, we use a terminology called as sub-conventional warfare. So every operation from peacetime to conventional war is sub-conventional warfare, and that is the mother definition. Now, within this, you have various facets. There is irregular warfare when there is no pattern. There is asymmetric warfare when there is asymmetry, and I think we have discussed that. There is proxy war when other power is trying to project or send terrorists or send insurgents into your area. Now, insurgency is that somebody within your country has stood up against the formal government and is fighting against you. So that is asymmetric war. Terrorism, obviously, if you use terror as a weapon, then that is terrorism. Then the new terminology which has come is that if you mix conventional war with asymmetric war or any of these forms, then it is called as hybrid war. And another terminology which the West is using very often is gray zone warfare. Now, gray zone warfare is, to this hybrid war, you add economic war, information war, trade war, policies, political war. That becomes a gray zone warfare. So I've tried to cover all kinds of definitions which are floating around in Google, and people keep substituting one definition for another for the lack of information in some manner or the other. Now, when a force is weak, as was rightly pointed out, and you are using or you are fighting against a stronger force, then there are certain weaknesses of the stronger force. There is a big ego which Akbar had. There was also a big ego which many other countries had, and perhaps the current war which is going on is also a problem of ego between two superpowers. So that's one issue. So that can be exploited. The second thing is that at times people have the bigger powers have impractical aims. So that also is possible. It can be defeated. The third thing is that the asymmetric, anyone who is fighting the asymmetric war, the weaker party, he has a tendency and resilience to take more hardship. And he has lesser logistic problem, which was exactly the case with Maharana. He had more appetite to take hardship, and he has more appetite. His logistics was much lesser, whereas Mughal army had much bigger logistics. So these were some of the things. And somebody pointed out that in asymmetric warfare, yes, people are the center of gravity. Why people are center of gravity? Because people provide information, they provide funding, they provide logistics, they provide recruitment, and they also provide the area to hide. So that's the reason as why it is so. Now, let me just highlight some of the lessons which came out. Firstly, this war certainly personified that personal example by the leader is very, very important. And Maharana Pratap is an epitome of that personal example. His personal bravery, certainly nobody can match that. And that is something which motivates everybody, including my generation and all fighters of today's generation. And let me tell you for the benefit of viewers, we are now, even in our promotion exams of military officers, we have included now the contemporary warfare, and Haldi Ghati happens to be one of them, and Battle of Panipat also happens to be one of them. Because Battle of Panipat has got tremendous amount of lessons. We in CSA did discuss about it. Then is the case of that if you see the age, relative age, Rana Pratap 36 years, Akbar 34 years, Man Singh 26 years. So it was a younger leadership. So therefore the battles were intense and a younger leadership, because that time I think the war was more physical. So I think that was very well made use of. There was deception very well made use of, as it was already pointed out that a deception signal was given that Akbar has arrived. There was another deception signal that somebody posed himself as Maharana, and that's how it helped Maharana to escape. So these are the kinds of deceptions which were used. There was also a case of in the bigger army, when this proper planning was not there, they got mixed up, and there was a case of fratricide, because when these two two Rajput armies were fighting, their artillery and their musketeers didn't know as to which kind of who is on which side, and a number of Mughal soldiers were killed by their own fire as well. So that was another lesson which came out quite clearly. Maharana passed off as a free king in 1597, and for 21 years, I think he fought and ensured that the sovereignty of our of his kingdom and Indians as general remains. So I don't think there can be a better example to motivate all of us. Similarly, another factor is seizure and maintenance of initiative. Although Maharana's army was small, but Maharana Pratap always ensured that initiative was always with him. And that was, I think, very important. Good intelligence. The Bhils were and the locals were very good for intelligence. And same thing which we are applying even today in various contexts. I will not like to name the context, but certainly we have the concept of scouts, which is in the open domain, so I can speak, whether it is Ladakh Scout or Arunachal Scout or Garhwal Scouts. So there is a son of soil concept, and this son of soil concept, it worked then, it works now as well. Similarly, there was a lot of forethought, as it was pointed out very appropriately, that the son was left out of the battle to carry the fight subsequently. So that was a good planning and a good forethought. Similarly, even during British India, as it was mentioned, that we were never fully captured. Yes, even during British rule, people assume that India was totally enslaved. No, that was not the case. Northeast was never captured by British. Lachit Barphukan in Northeast had pushed him out, and subsequently the Nagas, British found that they can't win over them, and that's why they started paying them to run their own administration, and that is what is called as Naga tax, and that is why even NSC and IM keeps talking that either government gives me or I will do extortion and things like that. So these are certain examples which happens. These are some of the lessons. So for the paucity of time, I'll stop here and take on subsequent things, I would say, lessons in the question answer session. Over to you, Dr. Adityanji.
Thank you very much indeed, Major General Asthana. We had 4 distinguished panelists who gave their point of view on the same problem from different perspectives. I know that Brigadier Sehgal had to leave, but he was kind enough to initiate some discussion on concept of asymmetric warfare. Generally, we go straight away to the questions, but we have more comments rather than questions. So I will, dwell as to why I chose this topic. And I said that, we did discuss on this forum the Third Battle of Panipat and what strategic lessons we learned from that. So CSA will continue to go to famous and epic battles and interpret them in modern military terminology as to what lessons we draw. because if we don't learn from that, we'll keep on making the same mistakes. And that was the idea of this exercise. Admittedly, the concept asymmetric warfare is a Western given, concept. And the one main tenet of that is that it is a conflict or warfare between a state and a non-state actor. That is what is the Western concept of asymmetric warfare.
Yeah.
But we have to extend this concept, and it is whenever there may be two state actors. If you see Ukraine versus Russia war, it is definitely asymmetric warfare in one sense. In other sense, it's a conflict between two superpowers. So there is asymmetric warfare when there's asymmetry of forces. Then you use tactics in the war, final war, so that you emerge victorious. Historians have said that Maharana Pratap lost the Battle of Haldi Ghati. And that's the central theme from this discussion. And looking at everyone's point of view, I can say very coolly and calmly that no, Maharana Pratap did not lose the tactical battle of Haldi Ghati. Actually, he won the battle in obtuse sense, but he won the war. Because as has been said, that he was able to carry out his royal duties, give grants, land grants. And there are historical evidences in form of Tamar Patras. He could never be subjugated. He never paid dues or chauth to the Mughal kingdom. He never had the alliance of the daughter, and he never bowed to Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. So all the objectives of war of Akbar actually were lost, except for one fort city of, I believe it's Chittor, and Dr. Ratnu will help me with that. Maharana Pratap retained his kingdom, retained his sovereignty, retained his independence. Now going into the next issue, we generally say that British conquered India and had a policy of divide and rule. No, this policy had been there from before onwards. What the Islamic invaders did, they also used a policy of divide and rule. They divided the polity, the Indic polity, by establishing marital relationships with certain weaker houses, weaker kingdoms. And that is what Akbar did. Man Singh was supposedly nephew of Muhammad Jalaluddin. So he was fighting on behalf of his uncle to a fellow Rajput. There cannot be any clear example of divide and rule that Indic polity was divided by a foreign power that was trying to capture whole of India. So we go back to Professor Makhanlal's point that Indians have defeated Indians. Use of diplomacy. Diplomatic tools were used for almost a period of 4 years. And twice, the emissaries of Jalaluddin sat with emissaries of Maharana Pratap for diplomatic talks. But mind you, it's very, very important. Maharana Pratap never sat on the same table to dine with Man Singh. In political language, we sometimes have toothache when we don't want to attend a meeting, diplomatic meeting. Maharana Pratap had stomachache both the times. So, very good use of diplomatic skills was made of. Unconventional warfare. People have talked about asymmetric warfare, about, use of guerrilla tactics. Drawing the battle to the place of your choice. drawing the invading force into Haldi Ghati, where the hilly terrain was favoring the local population. You could actually have the snipers actually shoot your arrows downwards. So essentially, the Mughal army was trapped in that narrow locale. And yes, the use of deception was made by both the sides, whether you call it deception or al-taqiya or whatever, but these actually tactics were used in this battle. And contrary to historical pronouncement, I think the results were totally different. But amongst the takeaways, if, and that's a if, it cannot happen now, we can just imagine if Man Singh had deserted Jalaluddin, what would have been the outcome? So we have to continuously question ourselves that we sometimes invoke various notions, high flown notions, starting from Mahabharata, when Arjun refused to fight his brothers, his cousins, in the battle, and was exhorted by Lord Krishna to fight the battle, and he did it. If subsequent generations of Indians had followed the same advice, if Man Singh had refused to fight in favor of his uncle, the outcome of India's history would have been different. And that's the point we have to understand, that time and again, Indians have collaborated with foreigners. Not all the time, but some of the time I see that Dr. Ratnu is shaking his hand. But that is also truth. From time and again, Indians have collaborated with the foreigners, leading to tactical victories of the foreigners, although India as a whole has not been subjugated. So the lesson we are learning from this particular case study of Haldi Ghati is that the common wisdom, the historical opinion that has been served upon us is not true. This was a one-sided asymmetric warfare in which Maharana Pratap managed to survive and managed to confront the enemy for a long drawn warfare, was never defeated, maintained his kingdom, never, paid obeisance to the mighty or whatever, Jalaluddin the Great, that is what Akbar means, and continued to have an outpost of independence in Islamic dominated India. That is the major lesson of this particular case studies. I've seen that there are no specific questions, they are just comments from various people. So I'm not going to allude to that, but we are coming to 1 hour and 30 minutes time limit of this particular session. My thanks, heartfelt thanks to our 4 panelists. My thanks to our audience on a Saturday morning who decided to sort of, come for this particular topic. I see Dr. Ratnu wants to say something. I will give him the floor. Dr. Ratnu, please go ahead.
So much for this kind allowance. I'll just take 2 minutes of time. Throughout the session, I have been hearing things about Jaichand and Man Singh and Mir Jafar. About Mir Jafar, I'm not interested. The Islamic history is of little concern to me, but Jaichand was not a traitor. There is not a shred of evidence that the man supported Muhammad Ghori against Prithviraj Chauhan. We must be very clear, this is a leftist ploy to malign a Hindu king who, after the murder of Prithviraj Chauhan by Ghori, eventually fed the Battle of Kannauj, in which he was murdered by Ghori, and the son of Jaichand eventually kicked out Ghori out of Bharatvarsha.
Thank you, Dr.
Please
Ratnu. Thank you,
stop
Dr. Ratnu.
referring to
I
Jaichand
think
as a traitor. Number one, please.
Professor
Number two,
Makhanlal
more
wants to
important.
interject here. Let
More
Professor
important.
Makhanlal interject. I will come back to you. Professor Makhanlal, you have a rejoinder.
Yeah.
If you recall my statement here, I did not use the word Jai Chand being traitor. I said we all keep talking about Jai Chand and Mir Jafar and so on, but at the same time, we do not talk about many others. Yes, what you are saying is right. Much more things are there. And that is where I question my own tribe, historians, that when they talk about Jai Chand and Mir Jafar, why they don't talk about Man Singh. That was my straight question, and please forgive me. I never said that Jai Chand was traitor. A lot of more things can be said. You know, one of the great Khwajas from Ajmer, he kept writing to Mahmud of Ghazni when he should attack, when he should come, what are the situation in India. Look at that. For 30 years, he kept writing to Mahmud Ghazni. No historian writes about that. My complaint is not about anybody. My complaint is about my own tribe, in which I have spent now almost about 47 years.
Thank you, Professor Makhanal. 30 seconds
I-
for Dr. Ratna.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I just want to finish one point, that was definition of victory. Now, I totally agree with Dr. Omendra. At that point of time, the definition of victory was capture of king. If we see the chess game, in the chess game, unless you get the king, you are not a winner. You remain a stalemate. You get a stalemate. Nothing more
Sir,
than that.
beheading of king, not
Yeah.
even the capture.
Yeah, exactly. So, in that context, and casualties are disputable. So, casualties can't be taken as a mark for victory or otherwise. And Maharaja could retrieve bulk of his combat force from the battlefield. So, therefore, it was a planned withdrawal. It was not a hasty withdrawal. So, considering that it was not like some of the recent withdrawals which we saw. So, the fact is that there is no evidence to prove that he lost this battle. The only
Thank
thing
you.
is, yes, historically, Chittorgarh couldn't be recaptured. That's the only thing, and that's one part of perhaps the entire kingdom. That's it.
Thank you, General Asthana. I'll give 30 seconds to Dr. Ratnu because I interrupted him for rejoining of Professor Lal.
Something about Raja Man Singh Ji needs to be clarified even more. Please, I beg you all, learned fellow gentlemen, fellow Hindu Sanatanis, to read this book I have written with a lot of labor. I have given 12 reasons why Man Singh Ji cannot be called a Hindu traitor. The biggest one is that if you are born in your family in which your father and your grandfather have, right? Number one. Number two, if there is, in this is just a conjecture, I do not have a historical proof except that Asif Khan wanted to chase Pratap into the jungles, and Pratap was pretty lonely when he retreated after the end of Baldi Ghati. If it was Man Singh Ji who stopped Asif Khan from chasing, yet Asif Khan sent two of his generals, which were killed by Shakti Singh Ji, the brother of Maharana Pratap. Thirdly, in the battle of Mohi that happens 3 years after Haldi Ghati, 3,000 Muslimans are slaughtered by Pratap. Man Singh Ji is 20 miles away. And when message goes to Man Singh Ji, Mujahid Beg, the Muslim commander, sends the messenger to Man Singh to help. Man Singh turns away, goes to the hilly areas of Mewar, doesn't come to help. Fourth, the strategic vision of Man Singh Ji. He goes to Afghanistan, leads a Mughal army. In the Afghanistan folklore, even today there is a folklore when a mother says wo Gabbar Singh wali kahani to sirf kalpana thi. Actually, there is a folklore in Afghanistan that the mother would say to her toddler.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ratnu. You have made your point very well. Let's not extend the discussion. I think we have run out of
Varna
time.
Man Singh aa jayega.
Uh,
Man Singh Ji slaughtered Afghans with the Mughal army with a few thousand Kachawa Rajputs. Imagine the consequences of Afghans coming and having an alliance with Mughals. India would have been Islamized. There are 12 reasons why Man Singh Ji should be given the respect. The only Rajput traitor in this history is Bhagwan Das, the father of Man Singh, who stood a mute spectator to slaughter of 40,000 Hindus that I have clearly outlined in the book. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Ratno. You have made your point very well. Unfortunately, we cannot have this discussion open-endedly. We have run out of time. I know Professor Lal wants to speak, but we have to come to an end.
10 seconds.
Take
10
this
seconds,
separately
please.
with him. Can you kindly share his number and all with me?
We can do this discussion off the line later on because I have to conclude this program. We are way beyond our time. I'll make just one last point. People need to realize Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar was so afraid of Maharana Pratap. He never
Oh, yes.
went to battle face to face, always sent somebody else, never faced Maharana Pratap face to face. And that's the lesson we need to learn. And with that comment, I'm going to end this session like
And
always.
please do talk about the Battle of Diver. That is the most important battle of Pratap, where he decimated 30,000 forces in 3 days. That has been hidden.
Okay,
That's-
we will have future opportunities to carry on the discussions on this platform. In other this thing, we cannot, conclude everything, discuss everything on earth in a small session. So my thanks to everyone. We will have on October 22nd a distinguished lecture, as is our second event for the month, and that would be on leadership changes following 20th NPC of Communist Chinese Party. So please join us for that distinguished lecture. I am not taking the name of the distinguished lecturer, but that would be the topic, and we will probably have some linkage with what we are discussing today to that discussion. Thank you very much indeed, and bye-bye. Namaskar.
Namaste.